In this video, I'm going to show you how to trace your buildings using the Polygon Lasso tool and the Paint Bucket tool. The first step is to find these tools. And the Polygon Lasso tool is the third tool down from the top. When you open Photoshop for the first time, it will probably start off as the Lasso tool, that's the default, but we want to use the Polygon Lasso tool. And the Polygon Lasso tool acts a little bit like the pen tool in Illustrator. And then we're going to be using the Paint Bucket tool, which is here and it's nested under the Gradient tool, but you can just get it by clicking it, holding down, and then getting the Paint Bucket tool. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to make a new layer. Remember that we don't want to draw directly on the photograph, and I'll show you why not. If I draw directly on this photograph, right, so I just drew this shape using the Polygon Lasso tool, and then I'm clicking on the Gradient tool, and now let's say I pick a gray. Now I'm going to Command D, deselect. This shape now is a part of that layer, which we don't want because now that shape is not editable. In Illustrator, every shape is editable, but in Photoshop it's not like that. So I'm going to do Command or Control Z if you have a PC. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. I'm going to undo it until that's gone. For every building you do, you need to make a new layer. And I cannot stress that enough. So let's get into it. So I see this building is the frontmost building, and I think that it's usually good to start with the obvious shapes. Okay, so let's start with this shape. And I'm going to just trace this building. So I dropped a point below off the page. And now I'm going to just go and trace this building. And I'm not doing it exact, although I guess I could. And now I'm going to pick a gray to use. So what we talked about with value in one of the discussions is that when you have something in the front, the furthest thing in the front is probably going to be darker, and the things in the back are going to be grayer. Now, I don't want to use pure black here because then it's going to draw too much attention. We want to save the blackest black and the whitest white for the elements that we want to draw attention to. So I'm going to pick this gray right here. And now I'm going to hit the letter G to get the paint bucket, and on its own layer, I'm going to fill it in. And don't worry about losing the windows. That's going to come later. Okay, now I'm going to do the next. I'm making a new layer. And now I'm going to trace this building back here. Now we only see part of the building. We only see this part, right? This part here is what we see. But what I want to tell you to not do is exactly what I'm doing right now. You don't want to just trace the part that you see because that's not really the building. I just deselected using Command D. This building continues in space even though this building is in front of it, hiding it. So what you want to do is you can trace this whole building the way that it is. Not the way that you see it, but the way that you imagine it to be. And it's a little bit lighter, so I'm going to pick a lighter gray. Let's pick this one. Now I'm going to hit G, and I'm going to fill it in. And now I'm going to drag layer 4 beneath layer 3. So that building is now behind that middle. The building in the back is now behind the building in the front. And we can always re-layer things as long as everything's on its own layer. I'm going to make another layer. And this is how we make the buildings. You find the shapes and you trace them. And it's okay if things are not exactly perfect because as long as things are on their own layer, they will be editable later. G. Great. And now we have this shape over here. So we can continue making this building. I can zoom in. Remember, we have a high resolution, so it's okay to zoom in. You should be able to zoom in without too much trouble. So I'm not going to worry about being too exact. Let's say I make a wrong pen tool move. What I can do is hit, let's say I accidentally do this. That's definitely not what I want. So I'm going to hit delete, delete, or backspace, and that lets you get rid of points. Okay, so let's say I'm only going to do this, right? And I'm going to fill that in. That's a lighter color. It's being hit by the sun, so I just picked a lighter gray. I'm hitting the letter G. Okay, now we can see our progress by turning on layer 1. And layer 1 is that color layer. That's why I have you make the color layer, so that way you can turn it on and off to check your progress. So I'm going to turn it off. Let me just turn it on to show you something. I want to show you over here. This is what happens when you make the tracing only what you see. We can see this little gap in between, and that's unsightly. So I'm going to undo it. And it's not a big problem. Oh, actually, you know what it is? I did the wrong thing. I made these two on the same layer, and that's exactly the thing that you shouldn't be doing. So I just undid, and so right now it's not that big of a deal because I only have 3 shapes here, and it wouldn't be too catastrophic to delete my work or to undo things. But just imagine if you've been working on it for a few hours and you had to just delete something that you spent a long time on. And this is a very simple shape, but if I had spent a long time tracing it, that would have been much more upsetting. So be careful. Every time you fill a shape, make a new layer. Okay, so I just added a new layer for that. Now I'm going to fill it in with the gray. I'm going to hit G, deselect. Now what I want to do is I can either delete this or I can add to it by hitting the polygon lasso tool. The shortcut for that is the letter L. So I can add to this shape. Undo. I can add to this shape and just by filling it in like this. But I think that what I'm actually going to do is just retrace it. So I'm just going to delete what's there. I'm going to make a new layer 6, and I'll show you what you really should be doing. So we're filling this shape in, and we're going all the way down to where it overlaps with this building. And you double click to close the shape. You can also zoom in so you could see it. That's obviously not exactly right. That's closer. And now I'm going to fill the shape in. Deselect. This shape should be underneath layer 5. So I just dragged it underneath layer 5. And now I can turn this on and we can see that there's no more gap here. So that's much better. So this is how you make your buildings. You find a building to trace, and you just trace it. You want to go all the way to the part where, you don't want to just do what you see. You want to do the whole building, and you're picking colors. You don't want things to be the same color right next to each other because then they'll blend into each other. And that is how you trace your buildings. If you have any questions, please let me know.